Hey, we are Verifly. I'm Sid,
I'm Rosemary.
I'm Zach.
I'm Liam.
and Verifly is a second level authentication app for mobile banking and ATMs. So how Verifly works is that there's a secondary app called Verifly, and that pairs with your main mobile banking app for your respective bank. Not all banks offer this, but whenever we work with a bank, they'll have that add-on available. So once you have logged into your mobile banking app and you have logged into Verifly, it'll initiate a connection between them so that whenever you do go to an ATM, the ATM verification process will involve you just logging into your mobile banking app, verifying that it is you indeed. And then once that happens, you will receive a one-time unique code, and you take that code itself and put it in instead of a PIN or a card into the ATM. Once that unique code is in, you can withdraw funds just like usual, and you can go on. And this whole thing just adds another level of security. If you want, you can also use the PIN and card access still. It's not like it'll be, that ability will be removed by any means.
So we are going to look into the tables that we created. So first, administration. So for the administration table, we have a primary key as admin ID, and our attributes include first name, last name, date of birth, email, phone, and address. Next up, we have application accounts. So which each account that is created, it'll be tied to an app ID, which is our primary key. For our attributes, we have settings, which include dark mode, light mode, cookies, history, and notifications. Along with that, we have a foreign key of customer ID, another foreign key of dev ID, and another foreign key of region ID. Next, we have ATM table. This was like our bridge entity. So our primary key is ATM ID, and our attributes and foreign keys are bank ID and region ID. Next, we have the bank table, and for each bank, it has their own unique bank ID, and the attributes include bank state and bank city. Next up, we have bank accounts table, and for the primary key, is written down as bank account ID. Our attributes include balance, bank ID, and customer ID. Next up, for our customer table, our primary key is customer ID, and our attributes include first name, last name, date of birth, phone number, email, and address. Next up, we have our developer table, and for our primary key, we did developer ID. And for our attributes, we listed them as first name, last name, date of birth, phone, email, address, position, and we included a foreign key of admin ID because each developer directly reports to a certain admin, and so that's why we put admin ID as a foreign key. Next, we have maintenance, and for our primary code, we did maintenance code, and then for our attributes, we did maintenance description, and then we had a foreign key of ATM ID. So each maintenance that was done, it was done to a certain ATM, hence why we had our foreign key in there. Next, we have our region table, and that includes a primary key of region ID, and our attributes include state, city, and county. And then we have our survey feed. We have a primary key of survey ID, and then we had attributes that included ratings, description, app ID, and developer ID. So each survey was linked to which specific app was used for the survey, I believe. And the developer ID is the developer who is directly in charge of taking care of the survey. Next up, we have transaction ID, which is our primary key. And then we have our attributes, which are deposit, withdrawal, app ID, and ATM ID. Next, we have our unique code table, and our primary key is unique code. And our attributes include time limit and app ID. So for each unique code, it is only set to a specific application for the customer. Next up, we have Verifly employee, and our primary key is employee ID with their attributes including first name, last name, date of birth, phone, email, address, position, and admin ID. So each employee directly is under a certain admin, hence why we have admin ID as a foreign key listed in this table. And then lastly, we have Verifly payment with our primary key being payment ID and our attributes being payment description, payment amount, admin ID, and bank ID. So for each payment that has gone through, it is one admin is in charge of overlooking that payment, and the bank ID is the bank that was directly linked to. All right.
Next up, we'll be going over the relationship schema. Now, our relationship schema is based off of our ERD, although it's a slightly modified version of it. Our biggest connections are between our customer table, bank account, and bank, customer table, application accounts, their survey feed, bank, the verified payments, administration, developers, and survey feed. This all makes a nice clever loop for everything to come together. Another big connection is our application accounts, which has a specified region, which those connect to the regions of which the ATMs are also associated with. These ATMs also record the transactions that are connected to each application account. ATMs also have a record of their maintenances, which are based off of the maintenance ID and the ATM ID. Also, our biggest connection between our application accounts is the unique code, which is the main seller of Verifly. A unique code has its own app that's only connected to once and therefore then changed each time. Administration also looks over the developers and each employees of Verifly, as well as reviews the payments that each bank makes out to them for our services. Banks also own the ATMs and watch over them and therefore see over their maintenance, as well as watch over each bank account that each customer is related to.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and go over the forms now. So starting off with the admin form, admin puts in their ID, first name, last name, DOB stands for date of birth, the email, phone, and their address. Next, ATM information. So typically the bank would fill this out. They'd list their ATM ID, the bank ID as well, the region ID, which is the region the ATM itself is located in at the bank, and then the state, city, and county. This is the bank information sheet form, and then the bank would put their ID again, the state they're located in, as well as the city. This is the most important, arguably, customer information sheet, and they put in their first name, last name, DOB, date of birth, phone number, email, address, and bank account number as well. Next is the customer survey. Customer would put in the app ID, or it would be filled in directly through the app because they'd be able to see that and select to put in a survey through their settings in the menu. And then they'd put their rating, and being 1 through 5, and then the description of what is wrong and how satisfied they are with it. Next, employee information. They'd put their first name, last name, date of birth, phone, email, address, the position that they have, and the employee ID. Lastly, this is the main menu. Each of the buttons respectively take you to different forms, as can be seen now. And yeah, next we're going to go over queries and reports.
So for our first query, we're going to use customer bank. And From here, we use customer table, bank accounts, and the actual bank itself, using the bank ID, our customer's ID, using their first and last name, the state that each bank is in, and the city that the bank is in. And then from here, we can track their bank accounts, so we can actually see which customers are part of which banks. And here are our final reports. As we can see, all of our customers are here, and the banks that they're attached to, as well as the cities. For our second query, we are able to track which customers are in which county. From here, we have the customer table, application accounts, and our regions. Using the customer ID, the application ID, the state, and the county, our stipulations are trying to find Mecklenburg and Cobb County. Our reports find that we have two. We have Mecklenburg County and Cobb County for customer ID 34 and 78. Our third query is our developer to survey. And what this tracks is which developers are reviewing which survey feeds using the developer and survey feed. Using developer ID, their first name, last name, their survey ID, the ratings, and the actual description in the survey feed. And our final report comes out as this. We see all of our developers and all the surveys that they are part of, and the descriptions via the ratings ranging from very satisfied to very unsatisfied. Our fourth query is our maintenance to ATM. And from here, we can see which ATMs need which kind of maintenance, specifically using their bank ID, the region ID, ATM ID, maintenance code itself, and then our maintenance description and our stipulations finding hardware repair and wiring. Our final report comes out to two banks, ID 1 and ID 32. Respectively, they need hardware repair and wiring. Our fifth query is our transactions via regions. So as it says, we can find out which transaction was made in which region. That way we can catalog the analytics of where more transactions are made. We have our ATM, transaction, bank, and region itself using our fields as ATM ID, bank ID, region ID, and finally transaction ID. In our stipulation, we're trying to find transaction ID 7834 or 1278. Our final report comes out to these two. They belong to ATM 12, bank 1, 5498. Our sixth and final query is our unique code for our customers. And this just shows how each customer actually gets their own unique code using our customer table, our application accounts, and our unique code with the fields as customer ID, their first and last name, the application ID, and then finally their unique code. And finally, our report comes out to here. And it shows all of our customers, their IDs, first and last name, which application ID that they personally have, and their unique code that only lasts for a few minutes. And that concludes our presentation. We are Verifly. Thank you.